Welcome to episode 1 of the Space and Things podcast, a podcast devoted to the exploration of space.
In this week's show, we're going to be introducing ourselves and discussing the origins of this wonderful passion of ours.
We're going to have a look back at some of the incredible things which have happened this year and discuss where exactly we are right now.
And with all the regular events and anniversary celebrations canceled and postponed, we'll talk about some of the best online events that have kept us entertained this year.
So sit back, relax, get a cup of tea, and enjoy the first episode of the Space and Things podcast.
Oh my God! Unbelievable, but isn't it great to
You're listening to the Space and Things podcast with Emily Carney and Dave Giles.
Hello, I'm Emily Carney.
And I'm Dave Giles, and welcome to episode 1 of our podcast.
Now, before we get started properly, it's worth saying that we would love to hear from all of you. So please do come find us on social media and let us know what you think. We're on Twitter at Space and Things 1, Instagram, and Facebook at Space and Things Podcast.
We'll keep you nice and up to date and share plenty of news and relevant content. We also have a Patreon account with a whole host of extra goodies. So if you want to be involved with that, please head over to patreon.com/space and things. And also, if you enjoy the show, please rate, review, follow or subscribe, or all of them. Anyway, moving on. Emily, how are you?
I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm just chilling in Florida. Just got out of work, and I have a day off tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just enjoying life.
Excellent.
Might go out and have a beer tonight. Who knows?
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Protected, of course. Protected.
Yeah, of course. Did you manage to watch the launch this morning? The day we're recording, there was a SpaceX launch, a Falcon 9 launch this morning.
Unfortunately, I was at work during the launch, and I couldn't see it outside. And we're in our stormy season right now here in Florida.
Right.
So I couldn't really go outside and see it, but I did watch the playback on Facebook or whatever. So I did watch it, but not live though. I've really only seen one live launch this year, and it was a night launch, and it was nice. It was actually really cool, but I think it was in February though.
Yeah, there's been so many this year though. It's hard to keep up, isn't it?
Yeah, I've watched most of them on my TV because of the pandemic. I haven't been able to get really near the Cape. But I did see the ESA Solar Orbiter launch in February. I saw it from my house, basically. I went to...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I live about 120 miles from there. I was hanging out in my neighborhood and I saw it. It was really cool.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a pretty special launch, that one as well, isn't it? That's a very cool mission they've got going on. Anyway, we should crack on. Before we start properly, we should probably introduce ourselves for people, just so they know who we are and what we do. So I'm going to let you start with that, if that's all right. So Emily, please introduce yourself.
Yes, well, thank you. My name is Emily Carney, and I am a spaceflight historian. I write about spaceflight. I want to give a big shout out to the National Space Society for hosting me on their website. I have a blog that I've actually written for 10 years. It's called almost 10 years. In November, it's called This Space Available, and it talks about a lot of different subjects in spaceflight history, some of them kind of quirkier. So I've been doing that. I've written for other spaceflight and science websites as well, such as I've written some articles for Ars Technica. I wrote for America Space. I've also done a few articles in the Space Review, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other websites in there somewhere. If I didn't give it a shout out, I apologize. But I also started a group about 10 years ago called Space Hipsters. And we talk about basically everything great, past, present, future, you name it, in spaceflight. And we started that in 2011. And when it began, we had 4 people in the group. And I thought it was just going to be 4 people. You know, like, hey, what'd you think about that launch? That's pretty cool, right? No, the group grew very quickly. I did not think there were that many of us out there. And now we have, over 19,250 people, I think, something like that. That's last time I checked was, I think, this morning, and I was like, whoa, like, I don't even know how many people are in this group now. So it's really grown the last decade or so, and it's been very exciting. We have a lot of really cool people in the group, including a few astronauts, which has been really cool. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, this summer, all the events, all the big space events pretty much got canceled, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But usually I do, during the year, I do some public speaking and some outreach about, space flight and space flight history subjects, which looks like it'll be postponed to next year. But despite that, we've done some online events, and we're going to talk about that as well later in the show. So that basically sums me up, I think. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that the Space Hipsters group on Facebook is wonderful, and that's how I found out about you and your blog. But it's a really great group because of how the expertise in that group is amazing. It always surprised me. Someone will post a question, and there'll be someone in there who designed it or built it, or will know someone who designed or built it, and the expertise. It's pretty crazy. So it's a joy being a part of. And if you are listening to this and you're not part of it and you're interested, you should join. But 19,000 people. That would fill a stadium.
Yes, it's insane to me how much it's grown. It's like a big rock concert now. It's weird going to events, and it's cool. I'm not complaining or anything, but it's weird going to events and having people like, "Hey, Emily," and I'm like, "What?" Like,
no idea.
Hey, how are you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just because, my normal day-to-day life in Florida, nobody knows who I am. It's kind of a neat thing because we're all kind of, there's a, sort of a family feel about it. Like we all sort of know, everybody kind of knows each other. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, me too. And right. So, I'll crack on with my own introduction now. I'm Dave Giles. I'm not a space historian. I don't have the same credentials as you at all. But I am a massive space enthusiast. My day job is I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm a musician. I live in London. And normally I'm touring around and playing gigs and trying to do certain things. But in my spare time, my hobby is space travel. Not that I've done it myself. I just like watching it happen. And last year, for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, I traveled to the United States and went to visit every single crewed spacecraft flown by NASA, which was a pretty epic trip. I saw most of the air and space museums in your country. So that was a lot of fun, and I certainly have read many books as well. So I feel like I'm fairly knowledgeable, but I'm looking forward to this podcast teaching me a whole load more about my favorite subject. That is where we are. So with them out the way, I think we should probably crack on properly.
All right.
Okay, we're off to a good start. Play it cool.
So although I just said we'd crack on, I'm just interjecting slightly. We recorded this episode a couple of weeks ago. It's obviously episode 1. So we wanted to give ourselves enough time to get everything ready for the launch date. And normally we would record and release a podcast within a couple of days, but that didn't happen on this episode. And this part of the podcast, we always will try and do a This Week in Space as we talk about what may have happened in the world of spaceflight. But of course, we didn't know what was going to happen. And unfortunately, we had the tragic news of the death of Jerry Carr, former astronaut and commander of the final Skylab mission. This is someone that means a lot to Emily, and she has posted her tributes online to him. And in future episodes, we will definitely be covering his life in fuller detail and look at his place in history. But I just wanted to interject that as you listen to the rest of the podcast, please be aware that obviously that hadn't happened when we recorded this, but we will be addressing it later. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast, and now we are going to crack on.
Holy cow, what have you?
This year has been crazy, or bonkers, as we would perhaps call it over here.
It really has been nuts. Like I said earlier, everything that was obviously because of the pandemic, and I'm not complaining. I'm completely for this to happen, but everything that was supposed to happen this year, I had a bunch of stuff scheduled, space events, everything got either canceled or postponed. So yeah, is what it is.
Yeah, every tour I was supposed to be on has got no foreseeable start date, which is which is interesting. But we've been kind of lucky in the whole space world, because despite all our events and our day-to-day goings being cancelled, somehow space travel seems to have carried on, and we've had some of the biggest events of the last 20 years happen all this year, in my opinion, and it's been quite an exciting time. And certainly when the world is not much fun, it's given us a bit of glimmer of hope. It certainly has with me. So, you know, from Crew Dragon, the Demo 1, to the Perseverance Mars rover, to the ESA Solar Orbiter, there's been plenty of things. But Emily, as a space historian, what's been the thing that's excited you most about what's happened this year?
Oh gosh, well, it's hard to say, because every kind of little event this year has been for me kind of a balm, just because this year has been just so difficult, you know, just for everybody. And there's just, you know, been I don't want to be negative, but there's been certainly a lot of sadness and stuff like that. But for me, the most exciting spaceflight event was it's kind of redundant. People are going to roll their eyes and be like, "Oh man, that's pretty obvious." But the Crew Dragon flight a few months ago, they just splashed down about probably a couple weeks ago. To me, that was the big high point of the year. That made my whole year, I can say, just because we'll probably talk a little bit more about this as the podcast goes on. But I was born in 1978. I remember seeing my first launches, around 1981 when the space shuttle started. And we had the space shuttle for 30 years, which was pretty long time. And when it ended, all of a sudden, there was nothing, from Florida, at least for ages, and it was like, man, when are we getting back and stuff? And it kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And it was just really exciting for me to see a launch happen from Florida again. And also for me, it was so cool to see a new space vehicle. I loved the space shuttle. I thought it was an amazing machine, but it was designed in the 70s, and it kind of looked like it was designed in the 70s, and it was a wonderful vehicle, but I think it was time for it to be, it was time for it to, for a successor to happen. And seeing the inside views of the Crew Dragon while they were in flight and just them giving us a tour with the touch screens, I'm like, that is so freaking cool. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm smiling just thinking about it. It was really exciting because I'm getting older. I'm in my 40s now. I'm 42, that's not super old, but it's, I'm getting up there. And, to realize, wow, that's the first new crew vehicle since 1981. I mean, that to me was like, wow, that. So I was super excited to see that.
Not meaning to correct you, but there was one other crew vehicle, it's the Chinese one, which we don't see much of.
Yeah.
In my lifetime, this was the second time a new spacecraft that took humans into space, and the other one, I still don't know much about it. I know it happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know much about it. So it felt for me like this is the first time I've seen a new vehicle launch. And because of the access we had as well on the streaming that they were doing, it was wonderful. From the moment, from inside the suit up room right through to the launch pad, seeing them get in, being in there with them. I mean, we see that, for me as a big Apollo fan, we see that in the documentaries from 50 years ago. And in this country, we didn't get that coverage of the space shuttle. Maybe that stuff was being shown over in the US, but we didn't get that over here. So for me, it was like, we're watching it. And even though they still are test pilots, they're a little bit more media savvy than the old boys used to be. Those Apollo astronauts were so matter of fact. You'd get a wave, but on the whole, they were very mission focused. But you saw some real human elements with Bob and Doug as well. I mean, even the fact they took Tremor up, the little dinosaur, because it was their kid's idea to take that as a zero gravity indicator. All those little touches just made it really special. This is our life, right? We both love space travel. We both love all this. But seeing get excited about it was also really great. It was for me, it was like people were opening their eyes and going, oh, we fly to space. What's this all about? And they just got it right. And it really did. I had a tear in my eye, many tears in my eye as that thing went up. It was a great moment for sure. Yeah, and one I won't forget.
Same here. You were saying, earlier, in the States, we did, if you had access to NASA Select, it was a channel. You could see them do the suit up stuff during the shuttle launches, but if you network TV, honestly, they did cover some of the launches, but not. It was kind of sporadic because this sounds horrible. I think people begin to see them as routine. Whatever. It's just the space shuttle going up again. But for me, it was exciting to see, the clarity of the launch footage because I'm used to, the old school like Apollo and, the first shuttle missions and stuff. I've watched those millions of times. It was kind of grainy footage, of its time, the kind of, I don't know what millimeter film it was, but off the top of my head, but it looks kind of grainy, and to see it, the Dragon, with the Falcon 9, just leap off the pad, and it's this beautiful, high resolution footage. It's like I've watched that on a loop probably the last few months because it's so beautiful looking. It's just,
it really is.
Wow. Breathtaking.
Well, over here we didn't even we barely lucky if anything got covered on the news. But for me as a kid, the day after a launch or a landing, if I was really lucky, the newspaper would have a photograph, and I would cut them out. That was literally what I had to deal with as a child over here, and just anything I could absorb was great. But yeah, that footage is amazing, and SpaceX. I know some people have issues with them, but they really do get that stuff right. I mean, even the Perseverance rover launch, bear in mind it was the next big event that happened. The footage, I enjoyed it because it was still more than I used to get, but it was nowhere near as good as what you get from SpaceX. The graphics weren't as good. The speedometer broke at one point. It was a bit grainy and pixelated, and it was one of those, okay, you've got a few lessons to. I'm still enjoying this. This is great. It's more than I used to get. But SpaceX they really thought about it as a PR event as well. We need people to get excited about this. Yeah. Which I think is why they did the space age suits and all that kind of stuff. I think that there's an element of we need to get people talking about this. That's why they put a car on the first Falcon Heavy. They know what they're doing in terms of PR. But it was also exciting. That whole mission was just exciting. I think you said to me it was the first two-person launch since Space Shuttle 4, the fourth Space Shuttle?
Since STS-4, which was in S4. 1982, I believe. I want to say mid-1982.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous to think, isn't it? That's the first time that, that's happened in that long. And the first splashdown since 1974.
Yeah.
Other than the one in the lake, the first ocean splashdown since 1974.
Yeah. Other than the one that was on accident, I think, that the Soviets had, that wasn't supposed to happen.
But seeing those parachutes open up was just wonderful. That was a real highlight. Again, the launch was great, but those parachutes were beautiful. And I think it's something you take for granted because they did it so well back in the 60s and 70s. But parachutes are hard to get right on spaceships.
Yes, you are correct. Even in the early 70s, I wouldn't say they had problems with parachutes, but Apollo 15 came down -1. So that's always, for me, kind of if they had been missing another, they would have definitely had problems. So, that's kind of a thoughtful moment for me. So yeah, when the parachutes came out, I had tears coming down. I was like, okay, now I can kind of... I can breathe again and everything will be all right. Yeah, that was definitely for me the highlight of the year. And we've had not trying to change the subject from Dragon, but we've had this year, I think, in space has been pretty positive despite everything happening on Earth. So
for sure.
Yeah, to me, it's very, even, planetary. We have a planetary mission. We have, solar missions that are up, and it's just, despite everything, it's been kind of, exciting. And
when there's so much to be negative about looking around, to look up and be inspired is a nice thing. I mean, even the fact that the comet went past recently, and that was there just seems to be something going on up there at the moment, which is good fun. And there's just a lot of cool stuff that we're in a good place right now for this. It feels like over the next few years, we're going to have more and more exciting events, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do a podcast. I'm not going to lie, because it just feels like we're going to have things to talk about beyond just looking at the same missions we've looked at time and time again, which I'm not going to get bored of, but it's fun that we've got new stuff as well.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see a renaissance in space flight, and I mean, I think we're starting to see it now. I'm very positive about the future, so it should be pretty exciting, and there should be plenty to talk about. I will probably get into it more, obviously, as we go further into the podcast. But in February, Perseverance will land, and it also has the mission also has a little helicopter. Yeah, Ingenuity.
Yeah.
That's gonna be freaking.
That's amazing.
Awesome. I'm
so
they
excited
put a
about
helicopter
that.
up there, and then when you read why they're doing that, it's like they're trying to kind of invent, I guess propulsion concepts for future possible Mars missions. And I'm like, that is really a neat idea. Whoever thought of that is really like, they're very futuristic, because to me, if we go anywhere, if we settle hypothetically, if we settle the moon or, even if we just settled, Earth orbit or something, I mean, we're going to have to think about, okay, how are we going to get from here to there? You can't just, you might not be able to drive a car,
Exactly.
So it's just something that I think I'm like, that's really marvelously futuristic. I love the idea of testing something like that out. And even if it doesn't work, I mean, at least we tried. We can do it again, maybe. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure, I may have this wrong, but they're trying to bring back a big piece of Mars rock as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's the plan. I know it's more complex and that's going to take a few more years.
Yeah. I believe, and I could, if I'm getting any of this wrong, somebody on social media, please yell at me. I won't be offended. I can take criticism. I believe the European Space Agency is doing a mission in the future. I forgot what it's called off the top of my head. I've written a little bit about it. Basically, Perseverance is going to take a bunch of samples. It's going to store them in the crater that it's landing in, and or in that adjacent area. And this other mission is going to go and retrieve those samples, which is really cool. So that's not going to happen right now, but it'll happen in I forgot what year it's going to happen, but in the next few years.
Yeah, I think it was 2025 or 26.
Yeah.
I think it was around there.
My brain wants to say 25.
We've seen so many photos from Mars now. It feels like we should already have a bit of Mars rock here, but to bring back part from another planet. I know we've brought the moon back, but that's in grand scheme of things quite close.
Yes.
Yeah. And even then, we haven't done it that often.
Yeah.
So to bring back something from that far away in a whole other orbit, it's just blowing my mind that we're even attempting that, and makes me feel like in our lifetime we may see someone walk on that planet, which would just be nuts.
Yeah.
Absolute nuts.
I'm one of those people who grew up, in the 80s, and I seeing pictures of Don Davis paintings and stuff of, the space settlements and the O'Neill cylinders and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people know this. I'm a big O'Neill fan. I've studied a lot of his life and his work in the last year or so. And I still love the idea of, maybe one day humans will be able to settle space. Maybe if it's not on, another planet or another world, maybe it'll be in another orbit. Maybe we could have, kind of a cylinder or something out there that could have people in it. And I don't know. I still love those ideas. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if I'll see them in my lifetime. It would be wonderful. But I still love the idea of people learning to live and work in space, and for that to kind of become, not commonplace, I guess, but sort of become, okay, we can kind of spread our wings and actually live and work out here. And this could be our habitat, I love that idea.
I think we've kind of covered where we are.
Yes.
And what's been going on for now. And as of course we will come back to this again and again, I'm sure, over the coming weeks and months, as new things happen and new developments happen.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
Obviously, everything is shut down this year, rightfully so, as we discussed, and it's made me really appreciate what I did last year even more. My trip to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 and visiting all the air and space museums. I mean, it was the best time of my life anyway, but now it really, really means so much more. And I had a serious case of fear of missing out, FOMO, go on with all the events that were being planned for the Apollo 13 50th. Specifically, there was an event at the Cosmosphere where the Apollo 13 command module is in Hutchinson in Kansas that I really wanted to go to. And the good thing about this lockdown and pandemic is that opportunities have arisen to bring more people into the fold that probably wouldn't have been done because a lot of these events have gone online, and that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I don't think so anyway.
Exactly, yeah. I think so I want to say the San Diego Air and Space Museum had an online...
That was the one.
Yep, had an online Apollo 13 panel, and that was really incredible. Like, you watched it, right?
Yeah, it was Fred Hayes, Jim Lovell, and the four flight directors.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. Absolutely amazing. It did amuse me seeing Jim Lovell trying to figure out Zoom. He'd done it earlier in the week on the Smithsonian channel as well. He'd done a meeting on there as well with Teasel Muir Harmony. I don't know if he was holding an iPad or something, but you can just imagine a 90-year-old guy just trying to figure it out. It amused me, but he was so charming, and so was Fredo. And look at me calling him Fredo as if he's my mate.
He wouldn't mind. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's a sweet person.
It was great seeing those six people together talking about what was going on, and despite the fact that we weren't able to be together to do it. And I was very grateful for that. And I sat up that night having the best time and the biggest smile on my face hearing their stories.
It was kind of the same thing with me because I was like, I was hoping to go to a few, Apollo 13 related things this year. A lot of the stuff did get postponed until whenever we can all meet again next time. But seeing those guys together, it's like they never really miss a beat. They still, they vibe very well. You can tell there's like this camaraderie there. It's really awesome. As you said, the internet really has rescued this year from COVID purgatory. I don't know what to call it.
That's a really great expression.
COVID purgatory. It really has rescued it. There have been a lot of really neat kind of events, especially over this summer, that, they couldn't happen in person, but they sort of, they happened in spirit, I guess, online, which was to me really, really special. Gives you a sense that, okay, we're all still connected. There's still a sense of community, even though we can't all go and physically meet each other at some place. Because usually in the summer, this is my big travel time of the year. Usually I go to Spacefest. I was supposed to go to the National Space Society has an event once a year called the ISDC, the International Space Development Conference. I was going to go to Yuri's night. That obviously didn't happen. Despite all that, we did have some events that, sort of covered that. The NSS has a lot of great kind of seminars about different topics that probably would have been covered during the ISDC. Another thing is some of the kind of planned things from Spacefest went online. For example, Nova Space, that's the company that does Spacefest. They did do a panel. There's this great book series called the Outward Odyssey book series. Mm-hmm. And it was, I believe it was started by Colin Burgess, who is a pretty famous Australian space historian. He's really cool. And many space enthusiasts will be familiar with them. They're the books with the kind of black binding. They all kind of have a similar look to them. There's been a lot of...
Yeah, I've got a few. Yeah, I think I've got a few of them. The Don Isley book's definitely one, isn't it? The Apollo pilot.
Yeah,
book.
That is one of them. There's a lot of great titles, and I'm missing a bunch of them because if I list all of them, we'll be here for a while.
Of course.
But there's an excellent book about Skylab, which to me, if you want to find anything out about Skylab, it's required reading. It's called Homesteading Space by David Hitt, Joe Kerwin, and Owen Garriott. Excellent book. But they had a panel of a bunch of their authors a few weeks ago, I think, and it was really awesome. It was neat to see them kind of talk and riff about, the different things they'd written about and their process and why the series was started. And also Joe Kerwin, one of the co-authors, actually showed up, which was really
nice,
special. To have. It's neat to see an astronaut, show up during these things just like a real, like a regular person, and
yeah.
I mean, he is a regular person, but still, it's like, whoa, that's Joe Kerwin. What,
Yeah.
But there have been a few neat events this summer online. Space Hipsters, giving us little shout out to Space Hipsters. We've had events every couple of weeks, except for July 4th, and we've had a lot of special guests on. It's like these Saturday evening kind of meetings.
Yeah, these look great. The timing is slightly off for me and in the UK. They look phenomenal. You've had some great guests.
We do have, if you missed them live, if you couldn't see them online when they actually happen, we do have them in the group, so they should be searchable. But we've had a lot of really amazing guests on. Like, this sounds horrible. I don't even remember all the guests we've had. We've had Fred Hayes. We've had Nicole Stott on. We've had Mike Mullane and his son Patrick. Patrick just wrote a memoir. That's really funny and really good.
Is that about being the son of a space shuttle astronaut?
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Shuttle, I believe, is what it's called.
Oh wow, yeah. Okay, I need to get that.
Yeah, I've read some of it. I'm really behind with my book reading right now, but it's actually pretty. The parts I've read are hysterical. Their family is awesome, so I highly suggest getting this and reading it. We had a really special one this past Saturday with a bunch of space artists who work with the IAAA, and that was really emotionally hard hitting for me because they talked a lot about Alan Bean, who was one of the artists in the IAAA and was a real big supporter and booster to space artists, and obviously he was a pretty famous space artist himself, and I was actually crying during that one and trying to hide it. That was kind of difficult because it was just I didn't know him well. I talked to him a few times, and this was genuinely one of the most friendly, warm people ever. I mean, and I'm not just saying that because he was an astronaut. He genuinely was like that. Like, if you were interested in something and he knew you were passionately interested in it, he would really support you. He was a really good guy. So that was very emotional.
I've heard that a lot about Alan, and I was fortunate enough last year to go to the Wheeler Historical Museum, which is the town in a tiny museum in the middle of nowhere in Texas, where it's the town where he was born. He never lived there; they moved out almost instantly. But the main street is called Allen Bean Boulevard and stuff like that, and they've got a statue outside this tiny little town hall kind of vibe, school library-esque museum. And they took a punt and sent Alan a message saying, "Hey, we're going to start this museum." And Rhonda, who runs the museum, ended up becoming really good friends of Alan because Alan is that giving of his time. And once he knows that you're doing something for the right, or once he knew you were doing something for the right reasons, he would really get behind it. And I got to sit there with Rhonda for a whole night and her telling me stories about Alan. And it was just one of my favorite nights I've ever had. And he just sounded like the nicest person, as you said. Even I never met him, and I've only really began to really appreciate him since he died. I can understand why you would get emotional hearing stories about him, because he's just that guy, isn't he?
He really was. Like I said, I didn't know him as well as a lot of other writers. Like, I know Andy Chaikin was really good friends with him. But I talked to him a little bit, and I'll never forget this. I'm kind of digressing, but this is a story from 2016 Spacefest. That year, I was doing the Skylab panel there, and it was the first time I'd done a Skylab panel, and it was going really well. I mean, I was a little nervous, but I was trying to keep my cool because I'm like, okay, just chill, it'll be all right. These are just regular dudes, just like anyone else, And I'll never forget it. Him and Jack Lausma were on the panel, and they just start, going back and forth about, Skylab 3. They started joking about having to switch underwear at the end of the mission because they were running out of clothes and stuff. They were just joking and having the best time with each other. And they were talking about, they had a frozen, like a bad thruster on the command module, and they were talking about that. And it was hysterical because they were basically just like joking the whole time. And you realize, man, these guys were, that's kind of not a great situation. And they're just like, yeah, we had a bad thruster, and Jack sees this piece of ice floating by, and he's like, guys, I think our thruster just flew by. And he's like all calm about it. Like, hey guys, I think this just happened. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm up there and I'm like, please don't start cracking up, So anyway, I'll never forget it, because at one point when they were talking, I just look over and I'm like, oh my God, that's Alan Bean. Like, he met Surveyor on the moon. And I had that picture, and imprinted in my mind, and I'm like, just chill. Don't make a scene. Don't like faint or anything like that. So I got over that moment real quickly. But at the end of the panel, him and Jack came up and talked to me because they were like, oh, you did a great job and stuff. And I'm like, is this real? Like, is this a real thing? Because I'm like, this is surreal to me, just because I'm like, I'd read about these guys since I was a kid, and to me, they were like characters in a book almost, because I never imagined I would meet any of them in my life.
Yeah.
The fact that I have is like just mind blowing to me to this day. And and Alan Bean was like, thank you so much. Skylab is really underrated, and nobody talks about it that much. And, thanks for bringing awareness about this program. And I'm like, oh my God. So he's a genuinely, I know I digressed hugely here. We were talking about online stuff, but he was a genuinely wonderful person. Like, if you were into something or passionate about something, he would take the time and actually talk to you about it. And he was very supportive. And, from what I understand with other artists, visual, artists and painters, he was very giving of his time. He's one of the, I miss a lot of those guys. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of them pass away in the last few years. He was genuinely an amazing person. Everything you've heard about him is true. He was a good guy.
I'm sure we're going to talk about him a whole lot more, but right now I'm going to say, if anyone wants to find out more about him, I would thoroughly recommend you hunt down Rick Houston's Go Flight podcast, and there's an interview with Alan Bean in that, which is amazing. I think it covered 2 episodes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, if you want to know, if you don't know much about Alan and you want to know more, it's wonderful. So definitely go and check that out. But going back to what you were talking about, I think I remember what you're talking about. What does the IAAA mean, or is it AAA?
IAAA. I think it's the International Association of Astronomical Artists. I think that's what it stands for.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just
I should have clarified that earlier. I apologize, but basically, I don't know much about the history of the group. I don't know when it started. I want to say it started in the early 80s, and I want to say Kim Poor, who also started Spacefest, was a huge part of it. He's one of the biggest space artists of all time. Sadly, he passed away in 2017, but this guy was a huge deal. Like I said, one of the defining space artists, but that association has a lot of the best space artists in the world, all of them in one group. Not trying to give a shout out to my own group again, but Space Hipsters is we're planning to do kind of a showcase about of these artists via Zoom.
Nice.
Maybe like once a quarter or something like that,
Space art in that group goes down well every time.
Yes.
people love it. Rightly so. So what would you say has been your favorite event of this year?
Oh gosh, my favorite online event was interviewing Fred Hayes on Space Hipsters. I had help. I was not doing it all by myself. My co-moderator, Lois Honeycutt, she did a lot of the legwork as well. But we tried to cover parts about his life and career that really hadn't been adequately covered, because everybody knows about Apollo 13, right? You know,
Of course.
I mean, not to down what he accomplished during Apollo 13 at all, but it's I think it gets covered a lot. So we tried to cover what happened before he joined NASA, what he, did during his early years at NASA before Apollo 13, and we also tried to cover what he did during the shuttle program. He was a huge part of the shuttle program, and a lot of people don't even know that. So he flew, I believe, 3 of the 5 approach and landing tests with Enterprise, and that was a huge deal. That program basically had to be successful for the shuttle program to even go on. I'm not trying to down John Young here. I love John Young, and I respect his career immensely. But I really consider Fredo, he is the first shuttle commander. I mean, that's how I view it, because, I mean, if he hadn't done as of a spectacular job as he did during those flights, I don't think the shuttle would have happened, Did
this question may have been answered many times by many different people and by himself, but within that, did you find out, and you may have known this before, did you find out why he never went on to fly an actual shuttle mission?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think what happened was after the approach and landing tests, there was a plan to rescue the Skylab space station, which had been deorbiting, because basically what happened was the sun was approaching solar maximum, and it was becoming activated more quickly than people predicted. So basically what happened was the Earth's atmosphere started to expand, and Skylab started coming back down more quickly than anticipated. I want to say it was anticipated originally to come down in 1983, and then it got moved to 1980. And then they realized, okay, wait, it's coming down way sooner than anticipated. So NASA had a plan, kind of an audacious plan, to put I want to say it was a type of IUS called a teleoperator retrieval system. There's some drawings and schematics of it if you really want to look it up on the NASA technical reports server. If you're up at 4 a.m. and are bored, like I'm raising my hand. You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand here. If you're like me and you're a loser and have nothing to do at 4 a.m.
You've been there a lot.
Correct. I am a I frequently sit at the bar at the NASA technical reports server. Yes, I frequently sit at the bar there. I'm like a barfly there. But I digress. Basically, what happened was there was a plan to basically have the shuttle maneuver, close to Skylab and remotely attach using, I want to say, like a controller or something. I don't know if it was I forgot if it was the RMS or if they were remotely controlling it somehow to Skylab so they could reboost it, basically. The actual mission was supposed to be flown by Hayes commanding and Lausma piloting.
Wow.
Yeah, they actually even had a crew for it, but what happened was, obviously, the shuttle was not ready for flight by 1978, not even close. Also, Skylab was coming down pretty quickly, and there was
way too fast.
Yeah, I believe by the end of 1978, they pretty much figured out there was no way anybody was gonna be able to save it. So
yeah.
Basically, that mission went away, and I want to say Fredo was offered a better, probably, I don't know if it was better paying, but he was offered another position at Northrop Grumman, and he resigned. So I think he was probably, like a lot of the Apollo guys from that era, just ready for something different.
People don't realize as well, I mean, I know you talked about what he did afterwards, but people don't realize how big of a part he played in the Apollo 8 and Apollo 11 missions, in the backup crew roles. So it's not like he didn't do a load of cool stuff at NASA. It's not like he had that one flight that went wrong and then was at NASA for 15 years doing that. He did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and like I said, a lot of those guys kind of did the same thing around the same time, because there's a lot of, I wouldn't say conspiracies, that's kind of a harsh word, but I'm so sorry to bring this up. The whole, Skylab mutiny thing, those guys never flew again. They never flew again.
Yeah.
They were banned from NASA forever. And I'm like, that's not what... I'm so sorry to bring this up. That's not what happened at all. They all kind of were ready to do... They'd been around for a
Other
while.
things.
They'd already flown in space. They were kind of like, maybe I'm ready to dedicate more life to my family.
It's hard for people on the outside to think that you'd want to do anything else in your life other than be an astronaut if you've been an astronaut.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it still is a day job, and it still has the highs and lows of a day job, and you're not always in space. So the other stuff the non-glamorous side of it, you don't get to see as much, but they lived that day in, day out, and it can't have been that glamorous. But I think we'll wrap up there for that part, because that was a lovely digression. But I'm very jealous that you got to interview Fredo, because he's a real hero.
Yeah, he's awesome, and he's a really wonderfully friendly guy as well. Like, there's always this fear when you meet your heroes that oh my God, what if what are they gonna act like? But he is genuinely one of the best people. So it was just it was like the fulfillment of a life's dream, basically. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Stand by one. Yeah, I got him with the cabin reprint valve in there, Jack. Every time he does that, our hearts jump in our mouth.
So thank you very much for listening to our first podcast.
Yes, thank you. We've done it. We got it. We got through it.
We did it. All right. This is the start of something that we hope you'll enjoy and that you'll want to be a part of.
So please do hit the follow or subscribe button and come find us on social media. And we really would love to hear from you and love your feedback.
Yes, we'd love for this to be an interactive show, so please don't be shy. Please send us cards, emails, letters, what have you.
Yeah, and as Emily said, neither of us are scared of criticism. So if we get things wrong, please do correct us, and we will make sure we make amendments on the next show. And tune in next week for all the corrections and for more space and things. And remember, in space, no one can hear you stream.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.